Hello everybody and welcome to another top 5 board gaming video. Today's topic is all about music. So this is a broad category, but at the same time a relatively small niche within the board gaming community. As far as categorically speaking, you can go anywhere from being the manager of a band to being the person on stage trying to play the right notes. But at the same time, we don't see a huge number of board games, and that's kind of unfortunate. Music is something I'm really passionate about. I really love it. I love the theory. I love the math behind it, and it's just absolutely intriguing to me. Not to mention the fact that it's just a very cool theme to have in games if it's done very well. And so there's not very many of them, and obviously I'm curious what you all have to say. Are there any music themed games that you particularly enjoy, or ones that you like and you'd like me to know about? Let me know in the comments below, because I want to hear about more games like it, because I want to play more games like these. But that said, we're going to jump right in with my number 5. At number 5, I've got On Tour. This is pretty much the quintessential, "Woo man, we just started a band, everybody pile in the bus, we're going on tour." Literally, there's a picture of a VW bus on the cover of the thing. So this is a game where it's a very simple mechanical game where you just roll dice, and based off of those dice you put numbers on a map. At the very end, you are trying to plan a route for your particular tour where you go from lower numbers to higher numbers, and you're trying to hit as many states or countries as possible depending on if you're playing in the US or Europe. Obviously this is related to music because it is very much how a lot of bands get their start, but at the same time it has essentially nothing to do with music itself. It's still kind of a goofy theme and a fun theme, and it is something that happens for many people when they try to start a career in music. And so that's why it's still on the list, but it is my number 5. At number 4, I've got Symphony Number 9. This is another game kind of like On Tour that's not inherently about playing music or learning about music, but instead you are playing as a patron of the arts during the golden age of classical music during the 17th century, where you are sponsoring different musicians and essentially having them create works of music for you. So the idea is that you are paying them, you are spending your money so that they can survive and, pay rent and buy food and all that kind of stuff. And then in return you get compositions. And the idea is that hopefully during the course of the game, your particular musicians that you have backed will become more and more famous, and therefore become more and more excitable in terms of when you have a large concert and stuff like that. So this is very much a point-based game. It is a game where you can have a huge amount of money, or you can potentially go broke by betting on the wrong horse, so to speak. So you've got a lot of auction, you've got a lot of speculation, all that sort of thing. Again, not inherently about music itself, but it is definitely a look into how classical music was written by and large, because most musicians were not independently wealthy, and they did have to rely on patrons in order to do whatever it is that they did, which was write the music. They had to have some kind of a commission so that they could say, all right, well, somebody commissioned this, and so I need to write it. And it's just an intriguing look into that sense, and it is a fairly heavy game in terms of the mechanics, so makes it onto the list and a little bit higher than On Tour. Number 4 is Symphony Number 9. At number 3, I've got Symphony. Mostly just to confuse all of you, because all of these games are called Symphony. In this particular game, we are finally actually assembling a symphony that is going to play some music. In this particular game, you are going to go around and collect some instruments, and the cool thing about this is the idea of you want to play the notes correctly. You don't necessarily need to play them all. So you need to have the right instruments for the right notes, and you actually get to see musical notation, so you can see what notes need to be played, and there are specific instruments that are obviously better at playing particular notes. This is nice. It's got some replayability and some vast variability because of how the musical composition, the musical score is set up with different columns, and everybody's trying to play everything, and how you get the instruments. You can get them from your friends, you can buy them from stores, you can do all this kind of stuff. And so you do definitely have that very musical playing feel, but it's not super super complicated, so it's got a nice balance between low complexity with the musical aspect, but that's why it's middle of the road for me personally. Symphony is my number 3. At number 2, I've got Drop Mix. This is a really intriguing one that is obviously about the infamous DJing, but actual DJing, not I press a button and now I'm an artist. No, it's not that. It's actually mixing music and making mixes and keeping the beat up and keeping the party going. This is a really intriguing one because you have actual licensed music going on here that is controlled by an app, and the app is telling you what it is that you need to do. You can play this in multiple different ways. You can play it cooperatively, slightly competitively, and several things in between, and the idea is that you are literally trying to make mixes of music that's playing on your phone or tablet or whatever it happens to be through QR codes. So it's a fascinating game, and it is something that this is what DJs actually do, people, okay? They don't just push the play button. If they're good and they're actually DJs, this is what they do. So it's a really cool thing in that sense. I think it's absolutely intriguing. It's a cool thing to put into a game, but of course, just like all games that rely on apps or any other technology or things, it is possible that it's going to become unplayable at some point. But still, while you're able to, and while we're able to, Drop Mix is my number 2. At number 1, I've got Maestro, Symphony and Ensemble. Just to be very confusing, a third game with the word symphony in it. So this is a Kickstarter that, if you'll pardon the pun, I am kicking myself for not backing because it really is very deep as far as learning about how classical music worked, what it does, and learning about music theory. Very similarly to viticulture, this also has kind of a simplified version and the complex version, which is why you've got the ensemble and symphony respectively. The idea of this game is that you're kind of going around the board. You have a total of 60 minutes, which represent the entirety of the symphony you're trying to play, and on every turn you're allowed to try and get new instruments. You can try and play a piece of music if you have the correct instruments to play it. You can trade with other players to rent instruments and all of this other kind of stuff. It has not gotten a huge amount of love. It's flown relatively under the radar. It was not a super successful Kickstarter, but it did make it out there. And the fact is that I love it so much because you can learn music theory from it. This does actually teach information about music similarly to some of the other ones, but in this case much more in the context of an orchestra and classical music, so you can see what an orchestra is made up of, what instruments it actually has, how many, as well as the balance between them. And I find that personally very intriguing. I really love it. It's a great game. It's relatively well made. It's not perfect, but still very enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. Maestro, Symphony and Ensemble is my number 1. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite games about music. Again, this is a very broad contextual category in terms of we've got things like Rock Band Manager and all this sort of thing where you're in charge of a band, all the way down to you are trying to actually play music. But the thing is, there's still relatively few games out there that do this, and I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are. What are the games that fit this category best in your opinion? Let me know in the comments. What are your favorite games that you've played or not played or whatever it is, and let me hear what you have to say about music in general as well. Like I said, I am very passionate about music, learning music, teaching music. I absolutely love it. I've been playing since I was a kid, and so it's great to see even some games that have something to do with it, although I don't own very many, and so it's very unfortunate. But of course, as always, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my various social media pages where you can interact with myself and my channel in a whole bunch of really fun ways. Now, and as always, if you are in an area that is still dealing with COVID, please go stay safe, get vaccinated. We're not dwelling on it though, because it's been going on for way too long and we're trying to have fun. So that said, thank you so much again for watching. Hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.